He had his failings. There were times Evander tried to make the religion fit what he wanted rather than the other way around, and I think that was a real inner struggle for Evander Holyfield.
Although he was very faithful to his religious beliefs, there are things percolating underneath the surface that have a lot to do with the absence of the father, and that have a lot to do with self-esteem issues, that have a lot to do with people telling you all your life you're not going to be anything. And that's got to come out somewhere. That stuff doesn't just sit quietly inside you.
When Holyfield stood up to the bully and chopped him down, he became part of the American legend.
Evander Holyfield always wanted to fight Mike Tyson. He wanted to fight Tyson, I think, more than he wanted to breathe.
Mike Tyson became the gold standard for boxers in the ring, one that struck fear in most fighters. You see the other guys stand there and almost wet their pants. I mean, he would win most fights before the opening bell. Evander Holyfield never feared Mike Tyson.
He was actually signed to fight Tyson before Tyson fought Buster Douglas. And then when Douglas knocked out Tyson, then Evander got the Douglas fight.
After he'd beaten Buster Douglas and disposed of 42-year-old George Foreman, Evander Holyfield prepared to fight Mike Tyson. But 3 weeks before they were to meet in November of 1991, Tyson withdrew, claiming he had suffered a ribcage injury. Before the fight was rescheduled, Tyson was convicted of rape and sent to prison.
He knew he had to beat Tyson. I guarantee you that until Mike got out of jail, Evander was haunted by that. He was tormented.
When I was training Evander for the second fight with Riddick Bowe, he says, you know, Emmanuel, I sure hate that Mike is locked up because everybody's so afraid of Mike. Then he said, that's the one fight I want more than anything.
Holyfield had his reasons. During the 1984 Olympic training camp, he volunteered to spar with the younger but heavier Tyson, who was an alternate on the squad.
They had a war, and the coach had to break it up to keep two of his best fighters from getting hurt.
Mike was the guy that all of them feared. I wasn't afraid to talk to him, and everything was kind of cordial with me and him, and wasn't nothing to be afraid of.
They were shooting pool. Evander Holyfield was waiting his turn. Mike Tyson was cleaning up on all the other guys, and eventually Tyson got beaten on the table, and he decided he wasn't going to give up the cue stick. And eventually Evander convinced him it would be the smart thing to do.
Those right there were encounters that he knew when the pressure was on that he wasn't going to quit, Mike was going to quit.
Holyfield and Tyson had a big press conference in New York before the fight that never happened. And afterward, HBO's cameras took them and recorded a little face-to-face. I snuck back and watched. The two of them walked up to each other, stood face-to-face, and both of them instantly started laughing. They couldn't do it. It was like two friends. It was like two brothers who just couldn't fake the animosity.
5 years later, in November of 1996, they met in the ring. Tyson, released from prison after 3 years, had won back the WBA heavyweight title. Holyfield had lost to Bowe in their third match.
Evander's career in the ring wasn't going as we had hoped, and that was a setback. But it set up the opportunity for a comeback, because that's how we were able to persuade Don King to put Tyson in there with Evander, because King was certain that Evander was shot.
Evander's a 25-1 underdog. There were a lot of people paranoid that Tyson was really seriously going to physically hurt Evander in the fight.
Bell rings round one, Tyson flies out of the corner, and within the first 3 seconds, he buckles Evander's knees with a hard right that I'm telling you, I and everyone else thought that fight was over. Evander straightened himself, hit Tyson back.
At the end of that first round, Tyson hit Holyfield after the bell. The referee jumped between him, and Holyfield went right over him and threw a punch back. And he said something to Tyson.
And Tyson's eyes just widened to saucer-like eyes. And you knew then and there that fight was over. Yes, it took 10 more rounds, but that fight was over.
One of the things that Evander Holyfield knew about Mike Tyson was that he was not built for a long endurance, war of attrition kind of a fight. And that's what Evander Holyfield was going to give him.
I can fight on the outside, I can fight on the inside, and the only way that Tyson could fight is coming forward. And I wasn't going backwards.
Man, whew, he put some on Mike Tyson. I was surprised he lasted as long as he did. I mean, Evander was hitting him with some shots, man. My toes was curling up, and I'm in the corner.
The announcement of his boxing death had been performed many times. And here he goes, smacks Tyson around in the ring, and he proved the critics wrong once again. At that point, I was okay with him putting an S on his chest.
7.5 months later, Holyfield and Tyson met again.
The third round, Tyson came out and threw every piece of arsenal he had at Holyfield. It absolutely did nothing to keep Holyfield away.
Mike just snapped. You know, he was probably pissed off and things weren't going his way.
And all of a sudden, Evander went straight up in the air like a frightened cat. And I went, what the hell was that?
Tyson then spits out the piece of ear. And the piece of ear comes flying across the ring and lands nearby, and you're just like, I cannot believe what I just saw.
I got in the ring. Evander was calm. You could see he was PO'd, but he was calm. And when I said, this is fine, we can fix this, Evander, you go fight, he was comfortable with that.
He hit his ear like this with his glove. And then he said, let's go. Let's go. I came right on him, and when I hit him with a 1-2 and all that, he bit the other way. Because he realized that it wasn't going to stop me. Dogs bite because they're scared. They don't bite because they're aggressive. And people do too. He wanted out, O-U-D.
When Holyfield stood up to the bully and chopped him down, he became part of the American legend.
Holyfield showed us that monsters do not exist. They are figments of children's imagination. That if you face something with a righteousness, with a worth, with a preparedness, that you can do almost anything.
You could see him thinking about punching, but the thought wasn't being delivered from his mind to his hands.
I think Evander's legacy will be that he was one of the toughest warriors in the ring who tarnished a great achievement of rising from a light heavyweight, cruiserweight, to a heavyweight champion of the world by overstaying his welcome.
The idea of losing is completely foreign to him, and toward the end of his career, I think served him very poorly.
He's told a number of people, I believe God's plan for me is to finish better than I started, to finish as the undisputed heavyweight champ of the world.
In 1999, Evander Holyfield had 2 opportunities to reach his goal of unifying the heavyweight titles, but he failed in both attempts against WBC champion Lennox Lewis.
Lennox Lewis, too, he fought his heart out that night. He might have left his last touch of that level of fighting in the ring that night.
As Holyfield continued to box, his ring skills began to fade. In October of 2003, 2 weeks before his 41st birthday, he met James Toney, a former cruiserweight who was making his heavyweight debut.
That's kind of signaled the end of Evander Holyfield as a fighter. He didn't have the same snap on his punches. He didn't have the reflexes to block punches.
I told him, you're getting hit with too many right hands. If you don't get out of the way of those right hands, I'm gonna stop the fight. First punch that Tony threw, bam, right hand.
I think they're throwing the towel. Don Turner's throwing the towel, and it's over.
I think Don Turner did him one of the greatest favors a man could do a fighter by stopping that fight with James Toney. Yet, in Evander's eyes, that was almost a betrayal.
After the Toney fight, I told Evander that my opinion was that the best thing for him to do would be retired, because in my view, he was on top.
Evander is not to be denied. You know, in his mind, he can still be the fighter he was in 1990, and you know, he's not going to let a trainer or an advisor or somebody in his camp stand between that.
Holyfield hired a new trainer, and 13 months later he met journeyman Larry Donald, who pounded him as easily as he would the heavy bag, dealing the former champion more than 3 punches for every 1 received. Holyfield was placed on medical suspension by the New York State Athletic Commission and barred from fighting in the United States.
You could see him thinking about punching, but the thought wasn't being delivered from his mind to his hands. If we allowed him to continue fighting, he was going to be one of these guys that was going to suffer from pugilistic dementia. And if we didn't protect him, he didn't want to protect himself.
This was just another case of someone doubting him and someone disrespecting him. And when these episodes occur, it's Evander's style to say, well, I'm going to prove everyone wrong.
Holyfield pressed to be allowed back into the ring. After passing a series of medical tests, the national suspension was changed to a ban in the state of New York. In the summer of 2006, Holyfield, despite just 2 wins in his last 9 fights, got a license to fight in Texas. At 43, he refused to retire.
He still remembers the lesson his mother taught him and his promise to her to finish on top.
When people say, oh, you're too old, you ain't got no youth, this. I put 2 Corinthians 5:7. I walk by faith, not by sight. Meaning that if I walk by sight, it'll make me give up. But faith is evidence of things that are not seen, because the word of God said, I can be the heavyweight champion of the world again.
It's not gonna happen. You're slurring a little now. Step away. Have respect and dignity for yourself. Don't damage yourself any more than what you have.
He doesn't know when to quit. He doesn't even understand what the word quit means. So all of these competitive juices that made him great now make him potentially a tragic figure.
He still has a goal. People want him to live in the past, but he still has a future. He's not 60 years old. He's not ready to retire. You know, God has given him strength, courage, knowledge, and that's what he's using to continue his life.
However his career ends, Evander Holyfield has established himself as a highly skilled fighter who displayed courage, perseverance, and grace in a sport in search of those attributes.
What kind of career would it have been if nothing ever happened to me and everything was just dandy like that? Who can you really inspire?
Can you think of a fighter who was more underappreciated and underestimated than Evander Holyfield? I mean, Holyfield did what all of us thought was impossible. He became heavyweight champion. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times.
His story is a great story. It's a wonderful story. And it's a story that any kid who is of lesser means, but who has a dream, should hear and understand that they too can live their dream if they have the same kind of character, attitude, and perseverance that Evander Holyfield had.